It's not a cynical question mark. It's not loaded. It's just a simple inquiry. So, what is the change that I'm getting? Prior to 1997, Gordon and I were acutely conscious of this. We sought to answer the question by saying, as you remember, again, then further again, that we were a new and different progressive force, that we would combine ambition and compassion, that we understood why Labour had been rejected, and we'd learned. Even when we were 20 points ahead in the polls, and you will remember this, and some of my colleagues would say, oh, come on, Tony, ease off now. And I would say, no. It's at the very moment when we're ahead that we reinforce and repeat the message that our agenda is different from the past and we reassert New Labour. However, it was more than that. We had worked out a set of positions, not always defined policy, but positions that were clear and mutually coherent. We advocated a New Labour policy on the economy and also on law and order. We aimed to be as forward-looking on defence as public services. We were New Labour throughout. It was a philosophical concept woven across the whole fabric of the case we were putting to the people. We rewrote the party constitution, changed policy on education, Northern Ireland, trade union law, crime. There was no compromise with the essential manifesto of New Labour. And this was for a straightforward reason. We believed in it. We wanted to define not only our case for government, but the way we would govern. So over time, that question mark faded, and it was answered. The question mark over the Tories has gone into bolder print. It's grown, not faded. They look like they're either the old Tory party, but want to hide it, or they're not certain which way to go. But either is not good news for the country. On Europe, they've gone right when they should have gone centre. On law and order, they've gone liberal when actually they should have stuck with the traditional conservative position. And on the economy, they seem to be buffeted this way and that, depending less on where they think the country should be than on where they think public opinion might be. And the Europe policy, you know, it really isn't trivial. It's bad enough to end up trying to form an alternative far-right group to the mainstream conservatives like Angela Merkel or Nicolas Sarkozy. That really isn't smart. Now, of course, those leaders, they'll work with whichever party is elected. But forfeiting goodwill in such a spectacular fashion won't be a great beginning. And then withdrawing from the social chapter. That's going to expend vast amounts of political energy and capital. It's a truly regressive step. And for what? The feeling I get is that this is all a sop to the Tory party. Okay, but that's worrying at two levels, isn't it? The issue is too important to be a sop, so that's not good judgment. And if it is a sop, what does that say about the Tory party? Either way, Britain will pay the price, as it did before 1997. And by the way, it's interesting that no party has won an election in Britain on an avowedly anti-Europe platform since we joined the common market in the 1970s. On law and order, the Tories have opposed the stronger anti-terrorism measures. They've opposed much of the antisocial behaviour legislation. They even want to restrict the use of the DNA database. Right. Now, this employs the advanced technology of DNA tracking and matching to provide incontrovertible evidence of guilt or innocence. Its use so far has resulted in extraordinary breakthroughs. Old crimes whose victims or their families never received justice can be solved and perpetrators brought to book. Innocent people, as you know, have been freed. And as the database builds up, it becomes an invaluable crime-fighting tool. In time, it will also be a fierce deterrent, since criminals, particularly murderers, rapists, those who commit violent assault, will know they run a big risk of detection. So it's an absolutely sensible use of modern technology. It can actually help prevent abuses of civil liberties. Yet the Tories oppose it. So everywhere you look, where you want certainty, you get confusion. So the Conservative leader, speaking about his policy on the NHS a few weeks back, he spoke of his pride at how his party members wrote out the placards, marched on the streets, campaigned to save our community hospitals, our maternity units, our GP surgeries. Well, okay, that's a policy of preserving the status quo in the NHS. But here's Oliver Letwin, now the shadow cabinet member in charge of policy for a future Conservative government, speaking yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, paper I have to confess to reading nowadays. Right? He talks of bringing transformational free market principles to public services and says, we will implement a very systematic and powerful change agenda where hospitals compete for patients, schools for pupils, welfare providers compete for results. Right. Now that's also clear, incidentally. That's a policy of radical transformation of the status quo. Or an economic policy. 1 week, the absolute priority is deficit reduction. Okay, it's again clear. Yeah, but yesterday, a big tax cut became the centerpiece. Right. And not a vague when things are better aspiration, but a full-on pledge. Leave aside for a minute the rights and wrongs of the policies. What can't be left aside is that they're plainly diametrically opposite. So why the confusion? The benign, but still disqualifying explanation is that the policymakers are confused, not just the policies. But the less benign one is that one set of policies represents what they believe in, the other what they think they have to say to win. That's not a confusion, actually. That's a strategy. And the British people deserve to have that strategy exposed before the general election.